on to the first step, which is bag A, and it's basically mounting the servos and everything to the main shaft bearing block assembly. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit first. So you open bag A, and inside is bag A1, which contains bearings, your balls that go on your servo arms. Ooh, pardon me, computer booting up there. Contains screws, also your servo mounting hardware, and the two bearing blocks. Now, we have to do something first before we put all this together. And the reason being is when these servos get mounted in here, okay, they're going to be, it's going to be difficult to get at, when all the three servos are mounted, it's going to be difficult to get at these screws for your servo arms, okay? Especially once it's mounted in the heli. So what does that mean? That means we actually have to set up our CCPM for our servos now and get those arms on at 90, get the balls on per the drawing, and get all our servos set up with our radio. Then once we've got center stick in 90 and everything like that, then we can go ahead and mount them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get my three servos hooked up. All right, and we're going to go to, the manual says they want arms that are, again I'm using 9650. The manual says that they want the balls out on the servos at 16 millimeter, which is what it says right here, 16 millimeter. So in order to do that, we got to find an arm that's 16 millimeter. Now on these Futaba 9650s, the largest arm that came with them was this 4-star arm, and this farthest out hole is going to be 16.5 millimeter, this farthest one out, okay? So a half a millimeter is fine. It's not going to be a big deal. It just means my swash mix will be a little less than maybe someone with 16. But we're going to use these arms, and we're going to get the servos hooked up. When I come back, I'll tell you which servo's which, and then we're going to get our stick at 90, and we're going to get our servo arms at 90 before mounting them on the block. So let's come back, and we'll do that. Okay, so I'll be showing this on my X9303. DX7 is very similar. We want to go in, and select a new model, of course, and then I went ahead and changed my model name to Protos, as you see. Okay, make sure your swash type is set for 120 degree 3-servo swash. Okay, also from a device select point of view, if you're going to use the gyro menu, which you have to use on aux2 for X9303, DX7 you can use gear or aux2. Go ahead and turn on the gyro menu. I'm going to be using rudder travel adjust myself, all right? Or excuse me, gear travel adjust for my gyro gain, but set that the way you want. Anyway, that's pretty much it. All right, go into your model, and then what you want to do is go to your pitch curve and move your throttle stick until you got 50 in, 50 out. Okay, 50 in, 50 out. Another way to do this is just make your pitch curve for normal. We're in normal now, no switches thrown. Make it 50 across the board. That way it doesn't matter where you have the stick. You're 50 in, 50 out. Okay, so that makes sure we're centered. All right. So with that on, turn on your receiver. Oops, left the bind plug in. 1 second. I think it'll still work. And turn on your receiver. Make sure your servos are moving and everything, and then let's figure out what goes to what. Okay, so we have this bearing block, and two of the servos mount. This is the bottom bearing block, by the way. When we put it in there, when we put this together, I'll point it out, but this rib for the bottom bearing block goes up, and for the top bearing block, it goes down. So these two would go like this, and your servos would mount like that, okay? So just for reference, we're going to use the bottom bearing block. Manual shows that all the servos mount with the output shaft toward the bottom bearing block. So the two front servos, or these two servos together, is going to be aileron and pitch. So aileron channel and aux1 was what these would plug into. Doesn't matter which one's which, because we'll change our swash mix to get, and servo reversing to get everything moving in the right direction. This back one, which will mount this way, output shaft toward the bottom of the bearing block, will be elevator, and the arm will come off this servo coming out this direction away from these two servos. With these two servos, the arms will come out on each side. Okay, so now that we've got everything hooked up, what we want to do now, since we know we're at center throttle stick, 0 pitch, now we start checking our arms and finding an arm that's 90. Boy, that one got lucky there. That looks pretty good. Okay, not 90, not 90. Keep rotating till you find 90. That one looked pretty good. Now remember, we're going to be using these two outside arms on these, so we're going to cut the rest of these off once we find our 90. An elevator is going to go off this way, so we're going to find 90 there. That was pretty darn close. And that one looks, yep, almost. Nope, getting worse. See, Futaba, you can rotate these. Other ones, you're just going to have to keep rotating until you find the best. Okay, that one's just a hair off. Okay, now before we do any sub-trimming or anything, we want to make sure our servos are moving in the right direction. So remember, all these servos mount this way with the output shafts down toward the bottom plate. So all we have to do for now is get our pitch moving in the right direction. So that means this one's going to come up, this one's going to come up. Remember, they mount down, so this would be up. And this one, since it's out here, is going to move up. So that's what we want when we move our pitch stick up. So I'm going to move the pitch stick up. So you see this one went up. This one went down, not good. Remember, this is going to be the top of the heli up here. So that one's reversed, and this one went up. So that's good. Basically, all we got is we just have to reverse that switch, which is my pitch servo. So this one's pitch. I have it plugged into aux 1. I'm just simply going to go into my servo reversing. All right, and I'm going to change channel 6 and reverse it, and there we go. Okay, so this arm should be going up, this arm should be going up, this arm should be going up. When I go down, all three should go down, down. Now we know we have our pitch moving in the right direction. Now, I've done CCPM setup several times, so my setup came out lucky. I only had to reverse one channel. Let's say two servos were going in the wrong way and one was going in the right way. Rather than reverse two servos, okay, which you could, you'd go into your swash mix menu. One second here, swash mix, and you could just change your pitch, which I'm on right now, from a positive to a negative 60. We're going to leave them at 60 for right now, okay? We'll find out the high values at that point. So now that we've got everything moving pitch-wise correct, up, up, and up, again, output shafts down, we know that that's all we have to mess with right now. Later, we can change our swash mix if aileron or elevator's backwards. I'm not going to go into that now. But we want to get this right and our servo arms 90 at this point before bolting them in. So now go ahead and double check, and that is perfectly 90. This one is off a tad. This is my aileron, so I'm going to go into sub-trim, and I'm going to go to aileron, which is channel 2, okay? Channel 2, and I'm going to correct that servo a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. And what I like to do is just sight the top of the arm through the holes and look how in the relation to the servo mounting and the label on the servo. Probably went a little too much there. Okay, bear with. Okay, that's looking 90. And elevator's just a little bit off, so I'm going to change that. My trim was 10 on my aileron servo, so now I'm going to go to elevator, which is channel 3, and slightly trim that one. Okay, that one I wound up with 12. Okay, so that looks good. Alright, so at this point, we know we've got our pitch stick moving, all the servos in the right direction. We wanted to do that before we did any sub-trimming, because if you reverse a servo that you've sub-trimmed, chances are it's going to be off the other direction. Alright, but the main key here is we wanted to find what splines were closest to 90 while this is all out of the frames, because you're not going to be able to get them in very easily, and put your screws in and your balls on when the servos are all mounted up. Okay, at this point, now go ahead and trim off your arms. Remember, this servo will come out this way, this one this way, this one way. Trim off those extra arms, and go ahead now and put your balls on your servo arms. And real quick, the balls on all three servo arms go on the outside. So get them on the outside, sticking up from this horn. So get your balls on. Don't forget to lock tight the nuts for the balls. Get them on all three servos, get your servos trimmed, and get your screws in, and then we'll come back and mount them. Okay, there we have it. Got our arms on, got our balls mounted. Don't forget the nuts on the back and the Loctite. We've got our pitch servo, aileron servo, elevator servo. Again, move the throttle stick up. Both arms go up toward the top end of the servo, or toward the top of the heli when these get mounted. Down, they both go down. We've got our sub-trims, everything 90, and we're set. If we didn't do that right and we just put our servo arms on, Later, when we powered up and some servo arm was more sub trim than you wanted to add, and all you needed to do was rotate the spline, then you're going to be hard pressed, especially once these are mounted in a heli. Not saying you can't do it. I haven't put mine together yet, but it looks like these screws, servo screws, are going to be hard to get at. Maybe not impossible, though. We'll see when I get it together. So I recommend getting your servo set up now. Anyway, that covers that. What we're going to go into next is basically mounting them on the bearing blocks.